Well, of course, it's the start of a new year, and security will no doubt be paramount here in Nigeria, as it is also an election year. Many political parties have reeled out plans for this critical sector that had a mixed fortune of victories and many blows in the past year. Well, joining us this hour to share security perspective and expectations for this sector in the new year is British Army Reserve Officer Chidi Nwaonu, who joins us from London. Thank you very much, Chidi, for joining us at this time. How would you describe the security situation in Nigeria, which we know that you would no doubt have been observing? What would be your assessment of the security sector in Nigeria for the year 2018?
Well, looking at it from a from a general overview, the security situation in Nigeria is extremely dire. There are a lot of problems. Each of them seem to be multiplying, and there doesn't seem to be a solution to each of them individually or holistically. So if we look at Nigeria in detail, we're looking at it in each geopolitical zone. If you look at the northeast, we've obviously got the Boko Haram issue. And as we know from the past few months, particularly around Lake Chad, a lot of our FOBs and a lot of our towns have been overrun by Boko Haram. So it's clear that Boko Haram is on the offensive and is, being quite successful in defeating the Nigerian army. And also even the Nigerian Special Forces, the Nigerian Navy SPS, had their base overrun just a few days ago. So that situation is quite serious and would require a lot of attention. But also in the northwest, just recently in Maradi, we just lost 10 soldiers, in a joint operation with the Nigerians. We've had a serious bandit situation in Zamfara and Sokoto State that has spilled over into Sahel region in Niger and around Maradi and Birnin Koni in Niger. Now, we don't know if these are just bandits, if they're just, herdsmen, or if they're actually terrorists, from ISGS or MLF up in the Sahel. But obviously, it's a very serious situation where we're actually going on joint offenses with the Nigerians, which is, again, something which we don't really talk about, but it's been going on for quite a while. And as I said, in Zamfara, Sokoto, Katsina itself, we've got bandits, we've got huge displacement, villages being destroyed by these bandits, people being kidnapped. In the Middle Belt, we know about the herdsman farmer issue, which is still ongoing. Again, the same thing, lots of displaced people, lots of destroyed villages, and a lot of, time that is being spent and a lot of money that is being lost. And then in the rest of the country, although we might not have these, heavy insurgencies, we've got general insecurity, armed robbery, highway robbery, kidnapping, all these things that, make the lives of the citizens very insecure. So if you look at it, taking it all into context, Nigeria has a lot of security issues that need to be addressed.
And these issues could also have been compounded, no doubt, by the fact that even senior members of the armed forces were also killed, so to speak. There's General Alkali, who was killed in Jos, and only a few weeks ago, Air Chief Marshal Alex Bade was also gunned down somewhere along Nasarawa State. And then you've also talked about the war Nigeria is still facing with terror. Could there still be a link somehow with these deaths and the fight over there in the northeast?
Well, the link, these investigations are more or less ongoing, so one can't really comment too much on the details. But what you can see is that this general insecurity is no longer, something that just affects the poor or affects those who can't afford, police escorts or who are not issued military escorts. It affects everybody. So the area where Air Marshal Bade was ambushed was, the locals, are quite, vocal about it. That this is an area that's notorious for armed robbers, for kidnappers who will come out, hijack vehicles, and all of that. And the military kind of responded to that by putting a checkpoint nearby. But the armed robbers just responded by timing their operations for when the checkpoint wasn't around. And we don't know if the murder of Air Marshal Bade was, we don't know the cause of what it's down to, but it's symptomatic to all of the, general insecurity in the country and the fact that the situation is so dire now that it doesn't matter who you are, that this security situation is going to touch you.
Let's talk about the possible solutions now, as we have a new slate, so to speak, before us as a country, especially as we're entering into a very active political season with the elections, of course. Some have said, and parties have also reeled out solutions, some talking about there is a problem over centralization at the top. How much do you think this would help, if indeed it's addressed?
Well, we've got to be honest with ourselves. I think that's the key thing in that uh, we as or the Nigerian people and the Nigerian government, we need to like kind of stop looking at very easy and trite solutions. So the first thing is that every state governor gets a security vote. To date, no state governor has given account for of what they spend their security vote on, or I mean, periodically we see vehicles being bought, etc., etc., but we don't actually know what this money is being spent on. So every state has a budget to deal with security, but that money is just free floating, and we don't know what it's being used for. So that's just one element. People talk a lot about money, but the key thing is that we need to look, as I said, at the problems holistically. So the first thing that any party, any government needs to do is have a clean and clear strategic defense review. Look at the Nigerian security situation in its entirety. All our problems that have been mentioned are internal. These are things that are generated in Nigeria. We've not talked about the threats outside of Nigeria. We've not talked about the issues in the Gulf of Guinea, about issues going on in Cameroon now with the Anglophone crisis. How does that affect us? Issues in Chad. Chad is dealing with a rebellion up north, a rebellion to the east as well. How does that affect us? How do we deal with the issues in the Sahel? What France and G5 and the US are doing? How does that affect Nigeria? None of these issues, which are big strategic issues, are being addressed in any way, and we're all dealing with internal security issues that we should have eradicated. So the first thing, as I say, is an a strategic defense review, and then looking at all the elements of our law enforcement. Decentralization in of itself is not the key answer. It's how you decentralize. So we need an efficient police force. We need a much bigger police force, better paid, better equipped, better trained. And then, we have lots of vigilantes springing up all over the place. They are a symptom of the problem as well, because what it indicates is that we don't have enough police, and those police that we do have don't have the local knowledge. So you have to use, ad hoc forces. Now, these vigilantes are untrained, are not accountable under the law, and are not under any kind of chain of command that we can address any concerns to. So there needs to be a way to formalize that. So rather than having, decentral, you can have the vigilantes as an auxiliary police force, a local auxiliary police force under the local chain of command of that of the police commander. That we know we've got those low people who know the area, who know the terrain, who can then help the police. And with the military, we need a much bigger military. How do we get the manpower that we need? How do we look at what we are using with what we've already got? A lot of money is spent on the military, but a lot of it is wasted. We buy weapons from every country on the planet, so you end up with 10 different tanks in one unit, 5 different rifles, 4 different machine guns, 20 different types of ammunition. It's unsustainable. No army in the world, does things like that. In the British Army, the Air Force, the Navy, or the British military, sorry, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Army all use exactly the same weapon. It's very easy, to get spare parts for it, to get, ammunition for it, because it's standardized. So in addition to all of these things, we need to start standardizing our equipment. So it's easy to change from one place to another without having to get new weapons and all those kind of things.
All right,
There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it needs a good look at it.
Chidi Nwaonu, we thank you for your analysis of the situation on ground here, talking about the security sector in Nigeria. Thanks a lot, Chidi Nwaonu, British Reserve Officer, speaking to us from the UK.
Thank you very much.